There seems to be an awful lot of sad stories in the news today, and there are thousands missing. Does anybody care? We built a channel where we talk about those faces. Talking news with Debbie. Cassie Barnes has still not been found, and it's been 2 years since her case first hit the spotlight. Breaking. Child Daybell and Vallow both behind bars. Sarah Galloway was found. She wasn't found alive. What happened to Sarah Galloway?
It's too heartbreaking to share.
Children are still missing. Children like Dorsey. You're in shame. You just got away with it. Welcome to Talking News. Hello everyone. My name is Debbie. We use big stories to push little faces.
Hello everyone, welcome to Chasing a Murder, Talking News. Right now I'm going to ask you, please, right now before we get started, to push the subscribe button. Hit the like button and try to comment. Help the channel out if you really enjoy these series. So we're using big stories to get little faces out, guys. So right now we're going to go ahead and get started here. And we are in, I guess it's part 25. We're moving forward and it's moving pretty quickly at this point. The series is called Life Beyond the Grave, the Lori Vallow case. And we kind of left off last time where we were talking about the evaluations that Lori was having to deal with and the fact that she was becoming a flight risk. So Joseph Ryan, Tylee Ryan's biological father, has been fighting tooth and nail for custody. He's now starting to be able to spend some time with Tylee. But during a few sessions, some of the counselors and stuff noticed that Charles walks into one of these sessions and the children refer to him as Daddy. Lori says that the kids always refer to Charles as Daddy. So we know that Charles' sons stayed a night one night with Lori Vallow. And we're finding out that she's accusing these boys of doing something to one of her children. We're not going to go into detail on that, but you need to know that most likely, in my opinion, this is something she does to separate this ex-wife from Charles, because whenever she feels threatened or jealous, I feel like she creates this drama in order to separate somebody she doesn't want in her life. Lori has a very low self-esteem, whether people notice this or not. And I've noticed that she just really doesn't like to be the person that's not number one in somebody's life. So Lori had canceled several psych evals, but she finally manages to make it to one of them. She even shows up early. Now, guys, bear with me on this timeline because some of these are early research timelines, and the timeline, if you've seen it, is so huge. I may get a few dates mixed up here and there. So, around August 1st of 2011, Lori has shown up to this eval. And like I mentioned early, so she's being accused of being a crazy Mormon, a liar, and manipulative. And now the court is accusing her of not following court orders. And Joe Ryan remains in the game, at least for the moment. We find out that his attacks with the taser gun might have been something meant to do more than scare Joe Ryan, but to actually take his life. So in civil court, they find that Lori was in contempt and charges her with judicial interference for disobeying a child custody agreement with Joseph Ryan, and that's in regards to Tylee. And according to early information that I gathered on this, around August 5th to August 13th, Lori threatens to kill herself. And around August 5th, a process server serves Lori with the August 5th petition through serving her husband Charles Vallow, so they're not able to get a hold of Lori. The document ordered Lori to undergo psychological evaluation. Now, there might be a couple evals that she's asked to do, and that appears that maybe this one is attached to the fact that she told a social worker death would be an option before giving Tylee to her father, Joseph Ryan, even for a visit. Social workers say that these are real and serious concerns. So, like I said, a lot of this says that it goes back to 2008, and I'm having a lot of trouble because there's so much information, putting a lot of the earlier stuff in order. So, 2008. There's an evaluation in the custody dispute between Lori and Joseph. Later documents are showing up and saying that Lori Vallow is in imminent danger of flight risk. And then again, she's making life threats. So what's important to know about these life threats, that she would, death would be an option before she let Joseph Ryan have Tylee, says that she would do anything to win. And if you're following this series, this should change your perspective on how she thinks. We have learned that the possibility that Charles Vallow's sons being accused of doing something that I feel they didn't do. This was just an attempt of Lori to win her way and to get Charles away from his ex-wife. Lori has jealousy issues. She doesn't like to follow the court or laws, and that in 2011, even during this time, she's making death threats to herself if she doesn't win and get what she wants. Tylee Ryan has been sick for a period of time here, and I often wondered if possibly that this was something Lori creates in order to move eyes to a different direction and to cause chaos to prevent court from reaching a certain point. Lori is a drama creator. She does this in order to win her way in some aspect in her life, whether she wants somebody out of her life or in her life. These are very important characteristics that we need to understand about Lori before we get any further. I spent a lot of time researching Lori, especially the fact that they said that she was a perfect mother never made sense to me. Meanwhile, in the Chad Daybell household, we learn that Tammy's grandmother passes away. We know that Chad really seems to like her for some reason, and also, Chad likes to use her in order to control his wife. And Chad, he's always wanting to work on his family history. So that means they go to the temple and they build the branches and connections of past family members. And this is something he liked to put on his wife, Tammy Daybell. Well, remember when I mentioned to you earlier that Tammy Daybell was on Facebook and she was playing a few games. This was a distraction in Chad's opinion, and around 2011 he says, I felt an urgency to begin working on the Millar family again. And the reason why he's saying this is they would work these family branches and sometimes hit dead ends. But after some time, they find some interest to try to start piecing together those dead ends and making them branch and go forward. He says that now the dead ends we had faced earlier were now cleared away. But Tammy struggled to get motivated about it. She found a new hobby, Frontierville, a spin-off of the online computer game Farmville. She was spending a few hours each day building fictional online towns. I was hoping that she would soon get bored with it. So Chad, obviously, we don't know if he actually talks to Tammy about this game, but we do know that just shortly after this, he's going to have a claim that Tammy's grandmother, her spirit comes to visit him, and she has a whole lot to say about her granddaughter. So according to Chad, Tammy's grandmother in spirit visits Chad Daybell, and she has a lot to say. She says, you need to tell Tammy She needed to stop playing the computer game Frontierville. She needs to get back to work on the genealogy and the temple work. Chad said as he's sitting there listening to the spirit of Tammy's grandmother, he types up a message and then gives it to Tammy. Not only Tammy, but her parents too. And they read it that day. And that was September 23rd. And since that was Lucille's birthday, the family took this as a sign that she had spoken to him. And in the 2015 blog that Chad has, he said every September 23rd from then on, he waits for another visit from Lucille. While some people believe that there's a possibility that he was seeing the spirit and speaking with Tammy's grandmother, a lot of people felt as if this was just another manipulative tactic of Chad Daybell's, a way to control his wife. Clearly, he's not happy the direction his wife is going, and he's wanting her to do what he wants her to do. So, for Chad Daybell, that September 25th of 2011, the grandmother shows up in spirit, and Chad says that he can feel this spirit standing over his shoulder. And then he hears Lucille's voice. He claims that the voice that he heard was the younger voice from her younger times. Lucille tells Chad, because she notices that Chad's doing everything alone, feeling sorry for him, that you can't do this alone. It's time for those who have stewardship to get off their butts. So in my opinion, Chad thinks that Tammy really is a supervisor. She's not doing much. She's not very helpful to him. But he says it's Lucille saying those things. Lucille then tells Chad about what it's like in the spirit world, and that she's working as a spirit world missionary. She added that she was the only deceased member in her family line who had been a member of the LDS on Earth. And so she really felt like it was important to prompt her descendants to do temple work. An interesting thing that Chad says next, he said he felt Lucille motion toward the Osborne County book on the desk. She says, quote, "There are thousands of spirits waiting to move to paradise, but they're stuck in a spirit prison until their temple work is done. Most of the people in that book have accepted the gospel and are waiting for our family to do their work. That book is key. It was compiled by the inspiration of many years ago. All the families in there are interconnected through direct bloodlines and marriage," end quote. After Lucille tells Chad these things, he says it's at that point that he can see in his mind a ball similar to the one that drops in Times Square on New Year's Eve. He describes this ball as being made of hundreds of interconnected pieces of glass. I understood that each family was comparable to that piece of glass. Each one is needed to make the ball complete. Lucille tells him that eventually this stuff will be done, but for them it's frustrating. The information is right here, but it's being ignored. They are spiritually starved. They know there's a big feast waiting for them, but they can't cross the gulf into the paradise yet. Chad says her voice got louder and angrier, and he writes in parentheses, "This was the Lucille that I remembered." She said, quote, "My descendants are letting Satan lull them to sleep with technology. 2 months ago in the temple, I told you to have Tammy quit her damn computer game, cold turkey, so she would be receptive to the message from me. But she didn't. She has more important work to do than those games. We need her desperately," end quote. Chad says that Lucille gave him several instructions to tell Tammy, including needed to get her mother Phyllis involved doing this work as well, not just Tammy. He said he quickly opened up Word document on the computer and typed everything that Lucille was telling him. I felt like Lucille's presence lingered until I finished. He said when he finally was down to the last few words, Lucille says to him, quote, "Go tell them right now. It's not your job to do our family's work. You've got books to write," end quote. So here he is, using this spirit of Tammy's grandmother to get his wife, and not just his wife, but her mother, to do things he feels that are important. Chad feels as though Lucille sticks around over his shoulder until he completes this document that he's going to hand over to his wife and her mother. He claims that this visit from Lucille is a wake-up call for him as well. He said it actually was a reason for him finishing the Standing in Holy Places series that summer. So you can see here that we're kind of struggling with the timeline still, so we'll have a published date for one of his books. But in a blog, it kind of states that maybe it's a little bit before that or a little bit after that. It just doesn't always match up. So like I said, he said that this helped him finish Standing in Holy Places, and that he didn't really have anything new in mind, but he started an outline for his new series, Times of Turmoil, which is another book series. And so this began, right after, September 23rd of 2011. And this is based off his visitation with the spirit of Lucille. So, after Chad finished writing this letter, the message from Lucille to Tammy, he says he prints it. Then he takes it and he goes to Tammy's parents' house. So something that goes through his mind at the time is the fact that he says that during this period of his life, he had not shared his gifts with Tammy's parents. It's something that he's always had in the back of his mind, and something that he knew he had. I mean, this is something he was practicing. But he wasn't feeling like he could let it out or let people know that he was gifted in these ways, being able to speak with spirits directly with angels or God. So for him, this was an exciting yet scary moment. He walks into Tammy's parents' house and they were all watching TV in the living room. He said he asked them to turn it off. Then he held up the paper and said, quote, "Phyllis, your mom, Lucille, just visited me. She had a few things to say," end quote. He starts reading this document and tells Tammy that she needs to get off the damn game. Basically telling them that it's not his responsibility to do the temple work on their family, it's theirs, and that he has more important things to do, like tend to his book writing. Remember, it wasn't that long ago that he felt like he wasn't going to be, publishing any more books, that the book company had died off, the economy was a horrible wreck, but now there's a new fire fueling in his heart. He said his mother-in-law, Phyllis, reads it, and that she and her daughter Tammy both just started crying, but they were crying in a good way. They agreed that Lucille's use of the word, the damn word, was a true sign that they needed. After reading it, he said his mother-in-law, Phyllis, sat up straight and said, quote, "You know what? Today is her birthday. Maybe this was a gift to herself." At that point, Chad said they all got chills as that sunk in. Chad Daybell bragged about how Lucille's message worked. Interesting. Tammy quit playing at Frontierville, and she and Phyllis have done a monumental work over the past few years on the family line. He said that thousands of names have been submitted to the temple, And for him, he says he knows at that point that there are people moving into paradise. Every September 23rd, like I mentioned earlier, Chad Daybell says that he will await her message. So this is going to be a good time for him to continue to manipulate his wife. And for a little bit of time, their marriage picks back up and they're doing pretty good. She's working in the temple, and Chad continues to work on his books. Meanwhile, jumping back to Lori Vallow's side of the story, Joseph Anthony Ryan Jr., December 14, 2011. He receives a letter that says, "Dear Mr. Ryan, due to the upcoming winter break, my client needs to know whether or not you plan to exercise your visitation on December 26th or thereafter. Please let me know your plans on or before December 19th of 2011. If we do not hear from you, then we will assume that you do not plan to exercise the visitation and will also inform my client. Sincerely, Evans, Dove, and Nelson, PLC." Now let's jump to Julie Rowe. We are moving into 2012. In a blog, Julie describes in 2012 her exposure to Dr. Bradley Nelson's emotional code. And we will go into more details on the next podcast on this. So this is where she starts learning about her spiritual energy. And Chad will learn what seems like he will learn from Julie some of this new information. Chad Daybell is about to pick up one of his top-selling authors, Julie Rowe, and she will write the books The Time Is Now and A Greater Tomorrow. I want to ask you guys before we end out, please, if you like these series and you would like me to continue making this series, you can donate to my Patreon page. Also, you can help by just subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing. I want to say, guys, thank you so much for your support, and I will see you guys soon.